Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Evans. I'm a training engineer at SUSE. And basically what that means is I write the documentation that goes into training for our training classes. So since SUSE has several products and several types of different types of products, and they're pretty complex, we have training for that. So if I open up my browser here and we go to SUSE training, we not only have classes that we provide through training partners, we also have online training, and we have our own SUSE certifications. You might have heard of these, and these are industry recognized certifications, not just our own little thing. So once you get them, those can go on your CV, and another company can verify that those certifications are real. So I write the material that goes into the training, and then we sell that off to our training partners who actually do online training and instructor-led training, that kind of thing. And we've just recently started doing our own online learning also. It is for a fee, but it is available. So I work a lot with our documentation team and with our sales team and our consulting teams to kind of get ideas on what to put into training. And I wouldn't say I'm the lead, but I'm the person with most experience with container applications. So I started with SUSE platform, which was our first Kubernetes application a few years ago. And now I'm working on Rancher. You probably heard that we bought out a company called Rancher earlier or last year. And Rancher is a pure Kubernetes company. And so now that we have their applications and their portfolio, we're starting to write training on that. So to begin, on my GitHub here, github.com/tgeek/openhouse2021, and I'll share this again later, I have the full tutorial of what we're going to go through today. And I've got this both in PDF and in LibreOffice format. So anyone who wants to go through this for themselves, they can do that. I've tried to write this for the beginner, but I do kind of assume that you know at least how to use a command line already. So, it's still pretty beginnerish though. All right, so let's begin by opening up a terminal. And we've got to, first of all, make sure that our VM is ready to work with Kubernetes. So I'm going to do a zipper refresh. And let's make sure that we have the packages that we need to work with Kubernetes. And first we need kubectl, which is the command line client for Kubernetes, and that is in the Kubernetes 1.20-client package. And I already have that. And secondly, we're going to need Helm. Helm is kind of like the package manager for Kubernetes. It's not exactly like Zipper, but it's kind of the same idea. So it looks like I've already got those installed. So I'm just going to confirm everything by running Helm version. Yes, that's here. And then kubectl version. Yes, and so those are both here. Great. All right, so K3s is very simple to install. We literally have one command line argument to put in, and that is curl, then -sf then the URL to the script. Then we're going to pipe that to sudo sh. Okay, that literally is everything you need to do to install Kubernetes with K3s. This is a fantastic tool that I'm glad that we brought into our portfolio. We don't sell this specifically, but if you were working for a company and you're using K3s, you could definitely call us, and we can work out some kind of support plan for you. But this is fantastic. If you've ever heard about computing on the edge, K3s is our tool to do that. It runs on almost any kind of device, just like a lot of our applications. It runs on Intel. It runs on Raspberry Pis. It runs on all kinds of little ARM processors. So that way you can run Kubernetes on those and be able to run the same kind of workloads that you would in the data center, but also on small devices. So let's clear the screen. And the problem with this is that we need to make sure that that the configuration files that are created for our Kubernetes are being able to be read by a normal user. So let's begin by opening up, by creating a new directory that's going to be used for Kubernetes. And that's going to be make dir -v. -v isn't really necessary. It's just verbose output. It just tells us, it just lets us know exactly what we're doing. And then I'm going to put this into my home directory .cube. Okay. Well, it says it's already exists, so it can't create it. Okay, that's great. So let's copy the configuration file. It's called, and that's in etc rancher k3s, k3s.yaml, and we're going to copy that to that home directory .cube, and we're going to rename that file config. Config is what Kubernetes is going to be looking for its configuration. All right, that's done. And now I need to challenge that to my local user. Now you can see here that my local user is Tux. So I'm going to change that file permission to be owned by Tux, not owned by root. That way, Tux can be able to read that file and not just root. Since we know that it's really bad idea to run things in Kubernetes, or actually in Linux and all, as root, we're going to be running these as a normal user because that's just the safe, sane way of working with a command line. So let's test it out. We're going to run kubectl get nodes. And what this did is it just got a get is a list commands. So it means kubectl or Kubernetes list nodes. And I've only got one node because I've only run this on one computer. If I run this on multiple computers and I link them together, I would have multiple nodes. But for our purposes today of exploring what K3S is and how to install Rancher on top of it, this is really all we need. So let's continue on. All right, so now that we have Kubernetes, there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of books, articles, whatever, on using Kubernetes. It's one of the biggest new technologies in the world right now, especially in the IT world, I should say. So if you need to learn Kubernetes, this is a great way to do it. Just install K3S on your machine. If you mess something up, guess what? We just run user local bin k3s uninstall and with a sudo in front, and it will remove it for us. That's it. And then you just start over again. With this tutorial, you can go back and you can run K3S as many times as you want. If you want to run it on virtual machines, that's great. If you want to run it on your Raspberry Pi, that's great. Now, we can't run Rancher on Raspberry Pi yet, but if you need to run the normal Kubernetes workloads or learn whatever you want about it, you can run this pretty much anywhere, and it's going to work for you. So let's cancel out of that. Now, in order to run Rancher, we're going to need to set up some prerequisites. The first one is something called Cert Manager. Cert Manager basically handles certificates for Rancher automatically. We're not going to be doing anything fancy here, but we need to have those certificates in place so that way whenever we use Rancher on the web, it will at least try to use it with HTTPS. So let's go ahead and do that. And the first thing we need to do is to deploy a custom resource definition. And this is going to prepare Kubernetes to be able to use Cert Manager. Now you wouldn't normally use something like this for an application. You don't normally need to make Kubernetes ready to run an application, but since this is a special application that handles some pretty low-level things, we do need to prepare it. So what this has done is it's run kubectl apply -f is from a file, and it's going to pull down this file here from GitHub. Once that's installed, we got this output right here. You don't need to be worried about this. It's just here, and It just confirms that everything's done the way it's supposed to be done. If this came back with errors like could not be created or file not found or something, then we know to troubleshoot further. But this is good. This is good output. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to create a namespace for Cert Manager. In Kubernetes language, a namespace is sort of like a folder. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to run kubectl create namespace, and then we're going to call that Cert Manager because that's what's going to go into it. All right, great. And we can run kubectl get. Get, again, is a listing command. So we'll get Cert Manager, or get namespaces. And we see that we have a new namespace here called Cert Manager. These other ones were automatically created by Kubernetes, and we don't need to worry about that. But this is the one that we just created. Okay, we need to take a little sidestep now, and just like with Zipper, we need to add in repositories for different types of applications. So we need to add in a repository for Cert Manager, and then while we're at it, we'll go ahead and install the repository for Rancher. So let's run helm repo add. The name of the repository is JetStack, and the URL here is charts.jetstack.io. JetStack is the repository where you find Cert Manager. And again, all of this is in the tutorial that you're going to get, so you can do it yourself. Next, we need to do the same thing. And we're going to run helm repo add, and we're going to be adding a repository called Rancher Latest. And that URL is releases.rancher.com/servercharts/latest. And with Helm, like it being a package manager, instead of RPMs or deb files, it uses what are called charts. And that's basically the same thing. All right, and that's already here, so we don't need to do anything else. That's fine. Next, we need to just update the repo. This is like Zipper refresh. It says that everything's great, and it gives us a nice message, happy helming. Okay, so the prerequisites for Cert Manager are done. Let's go ahead and install Cert Manager so that way it's ready to go. And we're going to run helm install. So we're using the helm command now. Install is like zipper install. The name of this installation is going to be called Cert Manager. The helm chart or package that we're going to be using is called jetstack/Cert Manager. We're going to make sure that this goes into the Cert Manager namespace. We just created that. And we're going to be using version 1.0.4 because that's the version that's currently suggested in the Rancher documentation. Okay, so Cert Manager has been successfully deployed. Now, so that's Helm telling us that, but we need to confirm that for ourselves. So we're going to use kubectl, and we're going to query Kubernetes to ask it to tell us, is it really ready? And Kubernetes, we're going to run kubectl -n. -n is just short for namespace. We could type in the whole word namespace if we wanted to, but -n is just a shorter, nicer way of doing it. And then that's for the Cert Manager namespace. And get, again, is list deployments. And we see that we have 3 deployments. All of them are ready, up to date, and available. So that's great. That's a green light to continue on. Okay, so all of the prerequisites for Rancher are done. So let's deploy Rancher itself. To begin, we need to make a namespace for Rancher. And we're going to run kubectl create namespace cattle system. And I know you might, at least I would expect a namespace to be called Rancher because it's for Rancher. But Rancher likes to use the namespace cattle system because that's their thing. So that's created. And the next thing we need to do is to actually install Rancher. Now I'm going to explain a couple of things here before we continue on. So let's go through the command. We're going to run helm install. The name of the installation is Rancher. The helm chart is Rancher latest / Rancher. Again, this is going into that cattle system namespace that we created. And now we need a real host name to be able to work with Rancher. Now on this specific VM, I do have a real host name with DNS that I could use. However, it's not everybody has that. What I do know is that the IP address of this machine is 172.99.1.10. And nip.io is a very cool resource. It's a free resource. It's not SUSE. It's just kind of out there by volunteers. If you put any IP address .nip.io, it becomes a host name. And this can work inside the internet or outside. Like this VM is not on the internet. It's inside of my laptop. But if I use this, it will actually create a namespace for not a namespace, a host name out of that my computer can then use to point to 172.99.1.10. It's very cool. If you're ever if you're ever doing any programming and you need a host name, but you don't want to deal with setting up DNS or buying a host name or something, this is a great, easy way to do it in a pinch. So let's go ahead and install Rancher. And that's really it. It says that Rancher server has been installed and that we can get to it by going to this URL. And we're going to do that in just a moment. First, we need to confirm the status of Rancher. Now it says that it's been deployed, but we need to make sure that it's really running. And I've got a cool command here. It's kubectl -n cattle system, -n is for namespace, rollout status. So this is actually going to query all of the deployments and make sure they're in a good status before the command finishes. So right now, only 0 of the 3 replicas that are expected are available. And in a few seconds, it's going to move to 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, and then finally the command will finish when all 3 of them are ready. So while we're waiting, let's see if we have any questions yet. Okay, none yet. All right. So we see that the command finally finished, and that we have Rancher successfully rolled out. So now that Rancher is rolled out, let's take this URL, copy it, and I've already got Chrome open for this, so let's open up Firefox. Doesn't really matter too much which one you use. And yes, we have a potential security risk. That's because we're using just an internal account. We're not using real signed certificates or anything like that. That's fine. We know that this is for just demonstration purposes. So I will accept the risk and continue. And Rancher is now installed. So let's give Rancher its own username. Or it's already got its own username called admin. So we'll give it password Linux. And I'm going to manage multiple clusters. We've got We're getting close on time, but we'll go ahead and continue on for a bit. So this is the current version, which is Rancher version um, 2.5. 2.6 will be out later this summer. And what we can do here is we can actually add in more Kubernetes clusters. If we've got an existing cluster, we can add them in. If we want to create a new cluster, we can either do that manually or if we have a cloud account, we can actually do that automatically. Just plug in the variables and it will create new Kubernetes for you. So if you're working in a production environment and you need to be able to handle a lot of clusters, this Rancher can do that for you. Not only can it manage them, but it can create more of them as you need. And if in this way you can bring up and pull down Kubernetes clusters as you need. If you've got 50 different ARM-based machines like Raspberry Pis, and you need to have Kubernetes on all of them, you can easily have them all running on here, and then you can go and can control them, see what's running on them, install applications on them, really just with just a really nice GUI. If we go back to our clusters, we see that we only have the one cluster the K3s cluster that we created to make this. We see that we're only using 3% of our CPU on this VM, 1% of the memory, and we have 15% of our pods. Our pods are our containers. If we go into our Cluster Explorer, we can dig in really deep on what's going on with this cluster. Here's our stats. Here are all of the pieces of Kubernetes, and we can even go to a marketplace of different applications that you can install onto your cluster with just a click. So, for example, if you need to have storage, you can install Longhorn. If you want to set up advanced networking, you can use Istio. And we've even got some third-party applications here that you can just install with one click. It's very easy to get set up. And of course, monitoring here with Prometheus and Grafana, just one click. Really great tool, and this is what really brings us to the forefront of the Kubernetes community, is because we have tool sets like this. Right? I think that's about it. I've got 8 minutes left. We open to take any questions in the chat if anybody wants to have any, if anybody has any. And of course, later this afternoon, I'm going to be having a chat room where anybody can come in and ask questions. My manager will be here to also help field questions about our training program and about some positions that we have open for training engineers. So if anybody wants to actually get into Linux training, we might have a position for you.